Welcome to the Beauty of Better podcast, where we help moms thrive in health and faith.
Hi, mamas. We're so glad that you have joined us today. And this is the second episode of Fad Diets today. And so we kind of briefly covered just the general concept of what are fad diets. Just a reminder again, those are things like the ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, kind of these, or even the carnivore diet. You've maybe heard of that one. And so a lot of these diets, they promise these kind of quick, maybe weight loss solutions, and they can be really enticing for people who are really wanting solutions quick. But the research has really shown in the long term, these diets really aren't helpful in producing sustainable results in the long run. And, here at Beauty of Better, we're all about creating sustainability, about taking little steps towards becoming better. And, when it comes to weight loss, especially, the tried and true kind of science has really shown that it supports a more balanced, sustainable, kind of approach that focuses on nutrition, whole foods, and also just even mindful eating. So today, I'm really excited that we're gonna talk about, what are some basics that we can incorporate in our everyday life so that we don't fall into that trap of fad diets. Sometimes when we're confused, we don't even know where to start. It's easy to just want to run where the crowds are going to these fad diets, and because we feel like we're following something. But if you have the knowledge of how to make that step towards a sustainable, healthy lifestyle, then that's going to set you up for success. And so that's why we're here today. We want to through something basic like reading food labels. That can be really confusing and sometimes they change. And so we just want to talk through that today of like, what are the basics of understanding food labels? How can you even teach your kids and what to look for? And then just also the basics of nutrition with those labels too. So we're going to talk on those a little bit today. I'll hand it over to Danielle. She's going to share a little bit on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, we just wanted to give you an example of a food label. I feel like it can be intimidating at a grocery store to walk in and it's like, all these things look fun and colorful. And then the ones that like are at your kid's eye level where it's like, I want that cereal. And it's like, oh wait, let's look at the food label. So we just wanted to go through a food label together just to make sure that we understand what we're putting in our bodies. And I feel like this is really an empowering skill when you can look at a food label and know exactly what you're buying, regardless of how it's marketed. That's just really good for you to know when you're walking through, especially with your kids. And as Kathleen said, to teach your kids to do this as well. So we're going to just break this up into the sections and really focus on the core components. So starting at the top of a food label, you should see servings per container. And that really tells you how many servings are in a container. And so if you have like a bag of chips and it says there's 8 servings per container, it means if you're eating the whole bag, you've got to multiply it by 8. So just being aware of how much you're having of something, that serving size will tell you exactly what you have in your hand. And then the next one down is the calories. And I actually just want us to reframe calories. I feel like calories has such a negative connotation to it, and we think like restrict calories or low calories, and it's like, no, think of calories as energy. So this food label has 230 forms of energy. Let's say it that way, right? So that way we just know this is how much energy we're putting in our body to fuel our body today. And then I'm going to hand it off to Christiana to just jump into what the fat content is.
So the next thing that we see as we progress down is the fat content. And so on this food label that you can see, we've got total fat, and then there's subcategories of those. On this particular food label, we have saturated and trans fat, but the other one that's actually not shown on this particular example is unsaturated fat. And so there are good fats and there's bad fats, and unsaturated are the ones that are really the best ones that are really going to benefit your body and have helpful impact on your health. And the ones that we need to have lower amounts are the saturated fats, and even the least amount should be of those trans fats. So you can see how many grams are in there and then percentages of that daily value. So again, if you're eating that full bag of chips, then those percentages get multiplied by 8. So it's good to be aware of if there are the good fats or the bad fats in that item that you have.
I'm going to also jump in. I forgot to mention this is off of a 2,000 calorie a day diet. Um, and so just know that the calories that are at the top, the 230, they come from the fat, the carbs, and the protein. So for every gram of fat you see, you're getting 9 calories from that, or 9 energies, right? And for carbs, you're getting 4 calories per gram, sorry. And then protein is the same. It's also 4. So 4, 4, and 9. So that's where your calories are coming from and where you get that 230 at the top, again, based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet.
Thanks for that, Danielle. That's really helpful. I'm actually just going to speak into a little bit the carbohydrate. I once tried one of the low carbohydrate things a long time ago before I did my nutrition degree, and I remember it was like a period of time, and I felt a lot of energy, and I had like results, but then I literally felt so deprived that whole time, and I was like, I couldn't wait to be off of that thing. And I had like this accountability coach and everything, which that was the only thing keeping me going. But carbohydrates are so essential for life, and they've really gotten a bad rap lately, but all carbohydrates aren't created equal. There's some like whole grain carbohydrates, like looking at the fiber. So paying attention to the fiber and the carbohydrates on a product label, you want that fiber to be higher. So whole grain like breads will have higher fiber content than like a white bread. And the reason we need that fiber is because that's going to slow the release of that sugar from the carbohydrate into our bodies. So if you're eating higher fiber foods, that's like whole foods, vegetables, a lot of these foods that get a bad rap on certain diets, they're actually, when they're in their whole food form, that's our bodies are designed to take carbohydrates that way. It'll digest it slowly. It'll maintain your blood sugar, create health within your body, just eating foods the way that they're meant to be eaten. It's when we get into these overly processed foods that are really high in sugar. Oftentimes also, if you look in the ingredient list, and there's a bunch of, you can even Google all the different names that they have for sugars these days. And sometimes, I know Danielle has a real heart into this, but sometimes companies will just hide sugars under different names because people just don't know. And they're like, oh, it only has this much sugar. But it's like, it actually has 4 different types of sugar in there. And so when you look at the total sugars content, how much of that, or even the added sugars, you're going to know how much has been added to this food. That's then going to probably cause problems on your body because it's just, it's going to not be in that fibrous form and going to probably spike your blood sugar more than if you have a higher fiber content food. So that was just one thing I wanted to share on carbohydrates. Like, don't be afraid of them. I always think Jesus called himself the bread of life. I was like, bread cannot be bad if Jesus said he was the bread of life. So if you have issues with bread because you maybe done a fad diet in the past and you feel like shame or guilt around eating bread, like I just want to encourage you just to pray and like just say, Lord, help me in that to break that off, because he is the bread of life and you need him, and bread's good. So that's a little aside. Sometimes I get on a little soapbox. But and just I wanted to give a little general. So like when you're looking for fiber amounts in a day, like healthy adults need between 25 and 38 grams of fiber a day. So that's a good kind of like baseline between then like 25 to 38 grams a day. So looking at the foods that you're eating, how much fiber am I getting in a day, and thinking through that. Christiana, did you want to talk a bit about protein?
Yeah, I'm just going to cycle back to the cholesterol and sodium as well. So now these aren't our nutrients like fat, carbohydrates, and protein, but they are important elements to recognize and know amounts for in a food label. And we'll unpack that in future episodes of kind of some of the other players. But you can also see that this item has no cholesterol, and that it does give you an amount for sodium. And there are general recommendations for how much cholesterol and how much sodium you should have in your diet. And one thing just in general at Beauty of Better is we recognize you might have different health conditions that your doctor is prescribing certain eating patterns or amounts of things. And so it's really important to know based on a physician's assessment of what you need is how you're altering your eating patterns, not just a recommendation of someone in general. So really that there's some science behind that and following that science. But jumping into proteins are maybe one of my favorites, maybe because I like the lifting side of things and the power of proteins and the building blocks, and I'm just fascinated by the science. But proteins are an important part to have in your diet to be able to keep your body functioning well. It's a predominant source for muscle, and the amount of protein found in items is going to be different if it's an animal-based product versus a plant-based product versus something that's more to maybe more artificially made and packaged as well. But if you're looking to have the great amount of protein, checking the grams is on there. Also, often we will see a percentage of daily value for protein as well, but that will help you reach those minimum standards that you need for the day.
I just want to speak real quick into protein, Christiana, while we're on the topic, because, like you said, it is one of our building blocks, and protein is what takes the longest to be broken down in our body to usable energy. And so that's why you always hear, people being like protein, protein, protein. But actually what's behind that is because it takes the longest to be broken down and is one of the biggest factors in stabilizing our blood sugar. And I think this is a huge thing for moms because, for one, us regulating ourselves, like, when we have toddlers screaming at us or, dealing with teenagers, like if our blood sugars are out of sorts, like we're probably going to be more reactive than responsive. And so it's like knowing that, okay, if you're prone to getting slumps in blood sugar, like learn to carry around snacks with you, whether that's little like beef sticks or nut bars in your purse with you, like knowing that you have to fuel yourself with consistent protein in order to stabilize those blood sugar levels. And even for our kids, like I just think, like, and I want to get better at this because after school I've realized is when my kids definitely have a slump, they've had a longer break between lunch and then they're just tired, they've let their guard down after school, like keeping high protein snacks like in the car so that like when you're just on the go or after school or these moments of the day when are kind of in a sense trigger moments for your kids that their blood sugar has dropped, it's like having that quickly on hand. And or maybe that's boiled eggs. I know that like Costco does those packs of like boiled eggs and stuff, like something like that, having quick on hand just to help stabilize that blood sugar can be so helpful in the home for moms, kids alike. Just to help calm things. So I just want to speak into that real quick while we're on the topic of protein and the importance of it. So.
No, that's so good. I also want to just add, like, when I think of protein, I just think of like that's how our cells rebuild. And so if we're not having protein or the adequate amount, then how are our cells rebuilding and how are we healing ourselves and just our whole immune systems in general? So yeah, protein is so important, but it also needs to be balanced with carbs and fats. Also on a food label, you can see there's vitamin D, calcium. So you'll have your vitamins and minerals listed below. Those don't count towards the calorie count, but they're just there for your awareness so that you know what you're getting. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, which isn't listed on this food label, which I think is probably the most important thing, is the ingredient list. I feel like look through the ingredient list of whatever you're getting and can you pronounce everything? Can you understand what all the ingredients are, or are they hidden sugars, as Kathleen mentioned? And just, Google them if you don't know what they are. And I feel like if there's more than like 5 or 6 ingredients, you probably are going to see some in there that you don't really know how to pronounce or say. And it's important to just know what are you putting in your body to fuel it to rebuild itself, right? And a lot of times I give my students this exercise where if they don't know an ingredient, they have to Google it and then they have to look at what else it's in. Because a lot of times they're like added chemicals or preservatives and not that like you can't buy anything like that, right? Because we're moms and we've got to pack lunches and get snacks and not everything is perfect and we're not striving for perfect, but we just want to know intentionally what we're purchasing and what we're putting in our bodies because that's how our bodies are going to refuel.
Yeah.
I also wanted to just speak to this and you guys can jump in too, but just, You know, a lot of times when we're going through the grocery store, the companies that have all the money are the companies that are the most unhealthy, and yet they have the best marketing budgets possible compared to the healthier companies. So a lot of times it's like they can frame products to look beautiful and like have fresh fruit on them. And really it's like, oh, actually it's all high fructose corn syrup, even though there's an apple on the front, right? And so just part of reading that food label is also just looking through the facade on the front of the product because that's what they
Yeah.
all are. They're
Yeah.
all just these beautiful pictures to try to get you through like color psychology and the greens and the fruits to make you think something's healthy when maybe it's really not. So I feel like the food labels really unpack that for you and show you what's really inside.
That's such a good point, Danielle. Well, I just love, just opening up this conversation and talking about it is just so helpful, and just knowledge is power, as we learn these little steps of like, okay, I didn't know that before. It's like we hope that you took one tidbit from today and that you're gonna embrace that and use it tomorrow. And so we just encourage you in that. We also just bless you as a mom, just as you're making these steps towards being better. Know that you're changing the generations, just even as you step towards health, like you are modeling that to your kids. So we just encourage you in that wherever you're at. And just thank you so much for listening today.
Thanks so much for listening to the Beauty of Better podcast.
If you liked today's episode, don't forget to subscribe.
Connect with our community and check out other resources on our website at beautyofbetter.com.
We hope this podcast helped you take the next small step to find the beauty in becoming better.